team did. So we looked at common sexual fantasies and porn searches. And so the researchers that I worked with kind of labeled it as a sense of power over others. And so this was men who wanted to see someone younger than them, kind of teen categories or college categories, maybe a race that suggested to them some level of subservience, or a petite body type. Those were kind of all linked together. And then we asked, what type of story or backstory would motivate someone to seek out that type of porn? And there were three key drivers to that. The first was having a very rigid parent. The second was having an immense lack of purpose in their life. And the third were very high levels of shame. So back to that issue of power. If you had a father who powered over you, who shamed you into compliance, that powerlessness has to go somewhere. And that is the initial lure to porn, is here is a place that I can begin to reverse some of those awful experiences. And now I feel like I have power, which is the very thing I feel like I have not had my entire life. But then the lack of purpose issue, these were men who looked back at their life and saw just a lot of failure. They didn't like their careers. They didn't like where their life was going. And what we found is that men who lacked purpose were 7 times more likely to increase their level of porn. So that was a really key finding, that a lot of times men try to fight to stop using porn, but they never fight to discover a sense of purpose in their life. And so that's where I would say curiosity is the third way. It's not just being shameless, but it's also not being bound by shame, but it's being curious about, why am I drawn to this particular behavior? And we can develop that curiosity, then that provides the roadmap to healing. So for that particular man, yes, he needs to address his own sexual health and desire, but he also needs to develop a sense of, how do I find purpose in my life? How do I grieve some of these formative wounds that have impacted my life that actually keep me vulnerable to doing harm to others? So that's kind of the work, is how does the symptom, how does the struggle invite us to understand the roadmap to healing? So that would be one. And then I also think about, I know I'm going into a lot of these, philosophers and wordplay, but I love this stuff. But the root word of sex is taken from the Latin word secare, which means to sever or to amputate from the whole. So sex then, according to some theologians and philosophers, is that sex is the awareness that I am disconnected from you, from one another, in the way that I go about reconnecting. And so we might see a widow at a funeral kind of grieving. And the philosophers would say, when that widow is grieving, that is an expression of her sexuality at work, because this partner that she loved, her beloved, has been ripped apart, and now she is disconnected. And so that sense of her tears actually speak to this desire for union. And so I think we need to broaden our understanding of sexuality to say it's not just about genitality, it's not just about orgasms, but it's really a sense of, how do I connect deeply to others in a way that kind of makes me feel less alone in the world. And so if my, loneliness actually causes someone else to feel more alone or more severed in their life, that's not a healthy expression of sexuality. So back to that, is this bringing disconnection into a place of connection? And if my disconnection and pain actually creates pain or more fragmentation or more suffering on someone else, that's not a healthy expression of sexuality, because it's creating more division. So healthy sexuality, including our genitals or not, is always bringing about union, beauty, goodness to myself, but also to another.